All right, Goonswarm winning, but not getting the full points, which they probably needed.
They needed. So
Yeah,
they
they really
managed
did.
to knock themselves and capital punishment out.
All right, yeah.
So good job to them. They took capital punishment down with them, which I guess is something.
So we were kind of right.
We're kind of right.
The goons, they describe, actually, I was right. I checked that as an X because the goons did so badly, even though they did actually win, so I was technically right.
They look like they're 10 points off Verge of collapse. That's
Yeah.
one more ship kill.
So if Verge can manage to lose points this next match, the goons are in great shape.
Yes.
But I guess, like Billy, the captain, described it as an all-or-nothing setup before.
Yeah.
And it actually is a good ECM setup they brought.
Yes.
It had enough damage to do some good things. It had a lot of jams. The problem is, it wasn't just a fight where they needed to win. It was a fight they needed to win and get points. This would have been a fine thing to bring like first round.
Yeah.
You don't bring this when you need the points, though. It's a nothing or nothing setup for this.
Yeah. You basically need something that will clear the field out in less than 10 minutes.
Especially now that we have the ASBs.
Yeah.
You can't always guarantee you're going to clear the
They
field.
only
with that.
needed one more Sleipnir kill, and they would have been above Verge.
Yep.
Which, if Verge got total hell death, then they would have made it through. But they brought an all or nothing setup, and they got all and nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking about some of the stuff that happened during the match, and we saw that especially on those last ships, we saw split fire against ASB ships.
I think that was a range issue.
Yeah.
I think the two Sleipnirs were out of range, and then they spent, I think, a good minute and a half shooting two different Sleipnirs before Villy was able to get everyone back on that one Sleipnir.
It's a really bad decision.
Yeah.
I don't like when you see that, it's normally because whoever you're shooting at got out of range of some of your ships and they had to switch.
Yeah.
But you've got Sleipnirs, which are fast, and then the Rooks, which can project really well.
Yeah.
It
It looked funky. It looked like exactly what you shouldn't do against ASB.
I think it was
ships.
probably more pilot error than FC error there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was both.
Maybe a little bit of both. Him not being able to get those ships back onto that single Sleipnir quick enough because those Sleipnir are 16 points each. I mean, that is a lot of points that they really needed.
The other thing that you mentioned early was that, of course, being in Goonswarm, you had some information about the setups, and they actually had a bad set of jammers selected for this match.
It was pretty decent, actually.
Yeah, I believe Villy told me it was 16 Mimitar jammers against their ships, and then I think it was like 13 Galente.
Yeah.
So Villy ran the odds that they lost their flagship, so wasn't really counting on a Mars setup, and didn't really think there was going to be a Kadari. So I don't think they had any Kadari jammers. They were just using off specs on the Kadari ships, which you saw lots of Harpies and Hawks, which didn't
worked
have.
out okay.
It worked out okay. They were able to keep things jammed. But it really was a gamble. It was all or nothing. But like I said, they got all and nothing.
I mean, dangerous bringing a lower DPS setup in a match like this. But all right. The other thing is that the Scimitar wasn't jammed till about 1.5 minutes into the match.
Well, they weren't even trying to jam.
Yeah, exactly.
For a good
exactly.
chunk of it.
Why would you leave that one for?
It looked
so long?
like they were maybe able to get a successful jam on one of the Kitsunes with drones, and that caused those jams to completely drop off of the Scimitar. And I'm not sure why they didn't have another Kitsune or Rooks.
You need to have those kind of things be redundant. One of the things that a good ECM team will do, like you may be tempted to say, all right, you jam him, you jam him, you jam him with like all your jammers. But what you really want to do is split up. Say each of you are going to be jamming all three of these guys. Split up your jammers, so that if you lose people, because if they only had one person on the Scimitar, what if that guy had died?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and even on your own voice comms, you're talking to the other guys in your team. He should have said no jam on the Scimitar, and one of those other ECM ships should have swapped two jammers over to that Scimitar just to ensure that Scimitar stayed jammed. Because we saw it took a long time for that first frigate to die on the other side, on the capital punishment side. I mean, they took way too long to get these frigates down for them to start working on those ASB Sleipnirs.
Was that the right choice? Like, should they have gone for the frigates first, like they did? Should they have gone for the logistics or the ASB Sleipnir first?
If they felt confident of being able to jam the Simi, then yes, they definitely made the right choice.
Yeah.
Because taking down the frigates is a fast way to take off DPS from the other side and reduce the number of ships. And B, those frigates were the only things they didn't have racial jammers for.
Right. And those off-spec jammers, lower strength, so it's a lot more chance for those jams to fail. And those assault frigates so strong with the DPS, especially those Harpies and Hawks, able to get those Kitsunes off the field and just really free up those Sleipnirs to do damage to the rest of the team.
So there's a guy on the Alliance Tournament forum who I just assume must surely be trolling, who said that EVE PvP is fairly simple because you only have to push like 5 buttons. And we're sitting here, and there's so much stuff that even though I've been here for a few years, that I don't entirely get. Like, I mean, there's so many considerations. There's so many like micro details that you have to keep track of and kind of understand that it's these like tiny things that win and lose matches.
Well, a lot of people think it's all press the orbit button, press F1, and then put your hands behind your head and relax. But there's actually a lot of manual piloting that needs to be done in a fight, because if you're in a frigate, you want to want to stay on one side of the fight, away from, say, a scram or a web. That way you don't get insta-volleyed.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of manual piloting that needs to be done in EVE that people just don't realize.
It's something where often you don't recognize what's going on unless you've been in that situation and seen it a couple times and that's what the practice is really, what they bring to a team. Once you've run through a setup 50, 60 times, then you know all those little idiosyncrasies. You can see, oh well, against this team, this thing that actually seemed like it would be a good idea isn't.
Right.
So that's why it almost feels like magic at times.
Almost feels like magic. If you just put your hands behind your head, boundary violation.
Right.
That's how it happens.
Exactly. just press that orbit button, you get slung outside.
All right, so last match of Group D. This is Fearless versus Virgin Collapse. We'll assume they've brought their most serious setups because they didn't know the results.
Yes.
Right.
So by the time, like, they're both through, but they didn't know that when they made their setups.
All right, well, that's going to be exciting. Who do you think is going to win, Les?
Not Fearless. I think Fearless, after they get over the burnt out module incident, they've done quite well.
Fearless has been managing Snake very well, so I think they're going to continue to do that and take this fight.
Fearless versus Verge of Collapse. I'm going to go with Fearless because they're fearless and Verge of Collapse are on the verge of collapse. So
I think that sounds
makes
like
sense.
a
It's very
solid reasoning.
intuitive, kind of.
I think I'm going to do the same just for that reason. Thank you.